As globalist governments are heading towards surrender of our sovereignty to merge with a corporate, unelected global government, the first stage of this is the WHO Pandemic Treaty. For them to behave this way, they have to be in on it to some extent. To be able to be controlled like this and to break their rules, to advance this evil plan, and seemingly be proud of it, as if wanting to execute this great step backward for the Homo sapien, but a great leap forward ahead for the Homo sapiens that control the planet. And here's the kicker: the people who control the planet may have come up with a narrative that compels the majority of world leaders of a secret that compels them to perform this agenda. So why wouldn't it be the Anunnaki through planet Nibiru arriving on our doorstep to reveal themselves as our creators? And now they want their planet back unless we refurbish it to their requirements. And we have until 2030. Only now it's 2025 when President Trump resumes office. Unless, of course, the election falls apart from 2020 in the meantime. What a time to be alive. Well, thank you and welcome for everyone to join this special edition of World Series News today. This is not the news that you would expect. This is something completely different. This is an analysis, a discussion, and a perspective of something far bigger than what we're led to believe, where the minutiae of daily news is what consumes us and divides us consistently. When we get past all of it, the globalists are taken out one way or another. We're going to want to know, is it as bad as they let us believe it was, or is there something much, much bigger and much, much better? Well, in today's discussion, I'm going to introduce you to, in a moment, to an author, a brilliant man who's out there doing this work on a daily basis. His name is Ismael Perez, and I'm going to bring him in right now. Ismael, welcome to World Series News and this very special edition.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited.
Look, so am I. This is it's a big deal, and there's so much we want to talk about today, and we called it AI or Ascension. And we're moving into a world where we're being told that somehow the human species is not good enough, that artificial intelligence is somehow better and it's going to do this great work that we're supposed to be able to do. And in a way, humans are becoming redundant to the system. But is AI all there is, or is there something else, Ismael?
No, AI is not all there is, although it is the ultimate evil, and not just something that is currently being expressed in our world at this time, but something that has occurred in many, many civilizations throughout the galaxy, throughout the universe, and according to my research, throughout the multiverse. So, from what I come to discover, if we could go in with the bang here, is that what we're really fighting here is not the far left, it's not the fascist, socialist, globalist agenda. It's not even their reptilian overlords, because even they have overlords. The reptilian overlords work for an ancient AI that has been consuming, destroying, assimilating world after world for billions of years. And so, what's happening right now at this time, especially since what they rolled out within the last few years, is nothing more than their attempt to enslave us in a technocratic, AI run dystopia. And that's the end game of this NWO agenda. It's not that just a few humans want to take over the world. No, it's they're literally handing our world over and all its resources and political power and economical power over to an AI system that is already sentient, and it is here. And I've come to understand that in terms of the biblical prophecies, not just regarding the prophecies within the biblical books, but also within other religious texts, and then also investigating the secret prophecies, I've come to understand that the rise of the Antichrist, or the rise of the beast is referred to as artificial intelligence. So AI and artificial intelligence is the beast, in other words. It is the Antichrist, unfortunately.
It's an incredible analysis, and many people will always go back to the idea, oh, there's no proof, there's no this, there's no that. How is it, Ishmael? If we just go back, and I just want to put your book up on the screen for people who are just going to tune in or watch later. I'll take that banner off there. Our Cosmic Origin, Open Your Eyes about Earth's place in the multiverse and about a creator organization of the cosmic. Can you explain just briefly before we continue what the book is about and how did you perform the research?
Well, it's an attempt to explain our true celestial and cosmic origin, not the hogwash that they teach us in school that we come from apes. Um, my book is proposing a whole new idea that involves many worlds, other dimensions, and parallel universes. Um, our and reveals not only the suppressed history of the Earth, but also the galactic history. I've come to understand that what the fascist globalist elites have been trying to do here is nothing more than what their alien overlords, the draconian reptilians, have been trying to do, but on a galactic universal scale, where they've been trying to pretty much bring absolute domination of our galaxy and other galaxies within our universe. So it is a war that is, I've come to discover, that is being fought on different realities, different dimensions. That's what they call it in interdimensional warfare. Um, and I really describe it in my book. The true Star Wars that took place millions of years ago, beginning with the Lyran Wars. Most people fail to understand that the human experience is nothing new. Humans have existed in this galaxy and in our universe for millions of years. And if you want to go further than that, humans have existed in the multiverse for billions of years. So we're not just a unique race. We're part of we share a cosmic ancestry throughout the different levels of reality as far as like physical worlds are concerned. And the first humans that were that came into existence within our own universe began in Lyra. And that's where our origin is from. Now, I've come to understand that the planets that they seeded the first humans here in our universe 560 million years ago are actually also intricately tied into the Earth. It turns out that this Earth exists in multi dimensions. And when our human race was first seeded, it was seeded in the 12th dimension. So we actually descended. We're coming from the top down. It's not a gradual progressive evolution. It's the opposite of that. We've been devolving, you could say. And that's how we originated. We originated as immortals on a different solar system, on a different constellation, on a different planet. And there were many wars that were fought by the original Lyrans and then, of course, the expanding Orion Draco Empire, who believed in the opposite philosophy of the Lyrans. And so this is where we get the concept of angels and demons. So when we study about the devils, about the fallen angels, and we read that they have scaly skin, vertical slit eyes, we're pretty much talking about the reptilians of Orion. And I've also correlated that the descendants of Lucifer are the reptilians. So a lot of this stuff is metaphorically condensed in our religious literature as the war between angels and demons. But it's really the interdimensional warfare that has been going on for millions of years in our galaxy and in other galaxies, to be exact. But the good news is that now, Jason, is that this war is now coming to an end in victory of the light. So there is God's plan that is unfolding. Whether people see it or not, those that are becoming more spiritually enlightened, more grounded, that are evolving their consciousness, are starting to see that there is a new earth that is slowly but surely coming into existence. And that earth is something that I believe that the just and the righteous are going to reap. We're expecting an event that's going to completely alter the timelines. So the wicked are not going to be going into the new ascending timeline. The wicked are going to be going into a different timeline. And that's what all the religious, I guess, literature refer to as like the harvest and stuff like that. But it's not according to religion. It's not just the Muslims that are going to be saved. It's not just the Jews or the Christians. We're talking about all the good people on the earth, despite, regardless of what religious background, or even if you're not a religious person, are going to be going into the new earth. So we are going to be seeing some sort of a timeline shift happening very shortly before the globalists throw people into these smart cities. Because
Mm.
Agenda 45, and Agenda 30, well, it used to be called Agenda 45, corresponds with what they call a technological singularity, and that is when I'm going to use the I'm going to reference the Terminator. Skynet is in full force.
Mm.
Everything is controlled by artificial intelligence, and that explains why they have been trying to genetically modify people through the mRNA, poison,
Hmm.
so that people are susceptible to the AI grid that they're creating slash Skynet, whatever you want to call it. All that stuff is real, and they want to hook everybody to the Borg, to the AI mind hive, so that people can no longer make their own individual choice. But I do know that right before that event happens, what they call the technological singularity happens, that there will be some sort of split in Earth, in the timelines rather, where the just are going to be going into a better world where there is no negative technology, there is no 5G, there is no chemtrails, uh, there is no World Health Organization and all that stuff. Everything's going to be going back to the natural order on that particular timeline, and it's going to be a sudden shift, from what I understand. So for those that are doing the work, for those that are choosing to live a righteous life, you have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to
Yeah.
worry about.
There's a lot to unpack in what you've said there. There's the rationalization of the human species as we're taught here on Earth, that we are either created by God or we're evolved from apes, two completely different scenarios. And of course, there's the entire third narrative that we talk about, that we were created by another superior or older advanced species, which is, I guess, the Anunnaki argument. A lot of people get stuck that the three are mutually exclusive. And my argument there is, if God can create a human being, a Homo sapien, and everything else on planet Earth, why couldn't God create species on other planets, in other solar systems, other galaxies, and seemingly in other universes that are also beyond our capability? Is that a fair argument to say that there is still one creator of everything?
Yes, the different races out there in the cosmos refer to this as the one infinite creator, which is pure energy. It's pure consciousness, pure awareness. And it's equivalent to universal consciousness, which is the all pervading mind of the cosmos. And so, yes, there is one infinite creator, and we are all expressions of it. And not
So,
just here on the earth, but all the different people out there, all the different humans throughout the different worlds.
indeed. And so we started this conversation a few minutes ago, you talked about the idea of AI at some superior level having taken over and almost dictating to the humans that control planet Earth to move us into that same direction. And this follows of what you just said with Terminator movies and cyborgs and technological. This is the whole point. And so what we're saying now in this war of the cosmos and this battle for Earth right now will somehow result in a split where humanity, organic humans, will somehow split from whichever way the rest of society is being led down a pathway through a technical AI body. The question, therefore, Ishmael, at this point is that if humans were to become merged with AI, with artificial intelligence, with computers, with robots and chips, they're not necessarily going to make themselves extinct, but they're going to evolve more and more to become almost completely a robotic AI. Is that how it would evolve down if we went down that pathway?
Yeah, and that has already existed. Other races have fallen into that pathway, and now they
Mm.
regret it. Now they're time traveling back in time in order to try to save their dying race. See, the problem with integrating with technology is that we begin to lose our connection to that prime creator source, or that universal consciousness that I referred to earlier as the one. And when we do that, we begin to pretty much we begin to less and less we begin to cease to exist. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We begin to cease to exist as a soul, as a spirit, as an eternal um, spirit, and we become just mechanical. We lose emotion, we lose our genitals, we can no longer procreate. And and that's why in many cases they first try to implement transgender, so that then later could that eventually transgenderism will lead to transhumanism.
Yes.
They want to begin to confuse people's, what they are, and that's why they're trying to influence the children in school, because it's all part of the transhumanist overall takeover of our planet. And that's the negative path. That is the
Mm.
what many call the dark side of advancing into what they call human 3.0. Well, I'm
Mm.
proposing a different version of human 3.0 through the activation of dormant DNA, because we're only using 4% of our full genetic material, which means that the other 96% is untapped potential. And I've come to discover that only within the 4% we're using carbon based genetics. The other 96% contains our crystalline genetics, our silica, not silicon, our silica genetics, which is an advanced version of crystalline, and of course our hydroplasmic genetics, which are structures that are still connected to the universal consciousness of the one infinite creator via our soul and spirit. So that is the different path. That is the organic ascension. And a lot of the people that are on the earth, not a lot, but a great number of us are um, leaning, we're leaning towards that. We're not accepting this transhumanist agenda at all. And yeah, so there's going to be, we're definitely at the precipice where the old concept of the Homo sapiens sapiens as we know them is coming to an end. And
Yes.
after 2030, I guarantee you that you're either going to have cyborgs or you're going to have superhumans, humans like angels, angelic humans, angels, humans with supernatural abilities without the integrating with technology.
Now, this is a profound statement, and many people who will watch today or watch in the future will think, are these people crazy, or is this food for thought for coming forward? But as you said, we're heading towards some form of technological singularity. And 2030 pretty much has been based now with the urgency coming from the globalists through, first of all, the pandemic treaty, which is looking forward to next year to moving ahead. Mind you, for people watching, you can check out my interview yesterday with James Roguski. There has been a bit of a setback for the globalists, and you can check that interview out on World Series News, and it's good news for many of us who are watching on. But of course, that's not the only part. You've got the World Economic Forum leading through digital ID and central bank digital currency, and it's kind of obvious now. And here in Australia, Ishmael, you're not going to believe this, but of our big five banks, the Commonwealth Bank came out yesterday after declaring some multi-billion-dollar profit that ATMs are no longer sustainable for the poor old bank. They can't keep it going so you can withdraw cash anymore. So we're going down this pathway where we're being manipulated once again to a pre-approved endpoint, that the cashless society. So we're already seeing that whoever's playing along already knows what the agenda is. So it's quite clear. I guess the question is, do we get to 2030 and a proportion of citizens will already be microchipped one way or another, whatever the technology is at that point, and then there'll be the rest that say simply, well, either biblically, I'm not taking the mark of the beast, or through other spiritual connection, I know that that's not the pathway, or is there a third narrative again, and that would perhaps be that Trump himself gets himself re-elected, RFK Jr., I maintain, will run independent and join Trump as his Attorney General. That's my theory that I put out there, and that will result in a big cleanup. Could this be the block that perhaps splits humanity, and it's not as obvious as a mark of the beast scenario? Have you given any consideration to the steps that take place from where we are today to when we get to that singularity in the future, what a pathway may be?
Yeah, well, there are an infinite number of parallel realities. We have to start perceiving our reality from a quantum model perspective rather than a Newtonian model, because if the Newtonian aspect is outdated, there is a reason why a lot of movies are introducing the concept of the multiverse, of
Mm-hmm.
alternative Earths. So, with that in mind, we could see that there are, different alternative Earths in in a spectrum, where to the far left you have the dark, you have the negative alternative Earths, which is globalization, hooking everybody to the board, taking away freedoms, implementing the global digital currency, um, putting everybody in smart cities, right? The ultimate, you know, dystopia. And then on the far side of the spectrum, you have um, the white hats. You have the Earth Alliance exposing the cabal, taking down the cabal publicly, where they do again come back into power, Mr. T and JFK Jr. and they expose all the evil, all the corruption, everything that's been going on for thousands of years, going back to Babylon, because this isn't something new. This globalization programs have been happening for thousands of years. They just kind of change their names around, and the agenda is still the same. Same bloodlines, same families. Um, and so, depending on where people are vibrating, there is going to be a split where the good people are going to be actually part of the positive timeline where Trump comes back, JFK Jr., and they restore not only the republic, but the entire planet becomes, you could say, restore as a result of that. So depending on where people are vibrating, depending on where they're putting their focus, that's going to determine in which Earth parallel reality they end up in. So yeah, there is a positive Earth parallel reality where the white hats, pretty much bring in a better economic system, prosperity programs, eliminate corruption, bring about justice, and everybody becomes uplifted, and we enter this new age, right? And then there's the negative timeline, but right now they're coexisting. They're coexisting, unfortunately.
So that's an interesting point, and I just want to get some clarification. If we go down an alternate pathway, are you saying that we all live under a Trump JFK Jr. resurrection new pathway, and that's what happens as a result, perhaps, of an election or a discovery or something, and that's what you mean by an alternate reality?
Absolutely, because it's all happening at the same. It's anything is possible.
Yes. Yeah.
So Earth reality where Trump and JFK and the Earth Alliance pretty much come into power for the
Yep.
benefit of humanity is happening. And then there's another parallel Earth or another alternative Earth where, Brandon gets another 4 years, unfortunately, and brings about a world government by 2030. And we don't want to be in that timeline, and how do you choose the timelines? Okay, through our thoughts and our emotions. Where are you constantly putting your attention, your focus on a daily basis? Are you mindful throughout the day? Right? Are you feeding into the negative timeline, or are you, feeding into the positive timeline?
Do you consider, therefore, if we just go down this political pathway for another few minutes, that the election defeat of Trump in 2020 was therefore part of this whole evolution of the idea that he's going to be re-elected and therefore cut off the global government pathway before this 2030? Do you think that was not necessarily it was meant to happen, but it was another pathway that still leads to an inevitable result for a positive victory for the humans?
Yes, yes. You have to start thinking of everything as a chess game, and from third dimensional perspective, um, you have, yes, of course, they did that because Trump is a time traveler. I don't know if you know his connections with Nicholas Tesla, well, his uncle's connections, but they've
Yes.
been time traveling for quite some time. That's why JFK Jr. faked his death. He never boarded the plane. Um, and so, yes, I believe that because everything's being played out like a chess game, sometimes certain things need to happen in order for the good guys to have the upper hand at the end of the game. And overall, understand that from higher dimensions, everything's being orchestrated as well. So that's why light or good or, evil is always on the losing end and light always prevails.
And
So
that's an interest.
I definitely see a comeback. I definitely see a comeback of Trump and JFK Jr.
It's an interesting point you make, because if the world at the moment, sorry, the multiverse is somehow dominated by a technological species, or at least it's making that appearance to us here on Earth. When you referred to that earlier, but you still say that that light will always win. And I guess what you're saying is that we are nearing the end of a cosmic war, Ishmael.
Absolutely. Yes. We're ending so many cycles, cycles that go beyond what scientists could currently measure. They talk about this 5,000-year world age. They talk about a 26,000-year platonic year, which is the revolution of our solar system around Alcyon, the parent sun. But there's also a greater cycle, which includes the revolution of Alcyon, our solar system, along with Sirius B, which is the arm of the galaxy we belong to, going around the galactic core in a period of 226 million years. So basically, what's happening here is going to affect the ascension of the galaxy. So it's not just about the Earth being restored; it's about the restoration of an entire universe, from what I come to understand. So all these cycles are coming into synchronization or culmination at this time.
Okay, so let's just track for a second. Humans, are we a junior species evolved perhaps from another species that either constructed us or we evolved from? But at the same time, humans have got a massive role to play in the renaissance of all life here on in the multiverse. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, yes, because we're the thing about us here on the Earth is that we're like a intergalactic zoo of genetics. We our genetics are very diverse, and so a lot is expected from us. Especially as we activate some of the dormant DNA, we're going to have some abilities that other alien races wish they had, where they have to depend on external technology to do some of the things that we're going to do through our inner technology, through the dormant DNA that comes back online. And so that's what makes us a very unique within our universe. So, so yeah, to answer your question, we are very unique, a very unique race.
I'm so thrilled to hear it because there are certain things that many of the audience will be familiar with a lot of what you're saying, and there'll be some that are tuning in and going, I'm not quite sure what Jason's on about here with Ishmael today, and that's okay. It's the idea of understanding you as an individual human. I'm talking to the audience now, Ishmael. Just when you consider something as simple as if there is negative beings and the idea that here on Earth we're struggling with so much going on during this whole last 3 years of this, whatever we went through, I don't even want to refer to it. It just makes me so angry. But when you think of the positives of humanity, just the idea of the creation of music, just the idea of the ability to love, those two things just there as mutually exclusive ideas would be two of the characteristics that would perhaps separate us from other evolved species in the universe. And in particular, I'm thinking of the aliens that perhaps Dave Grush may have referred to in his recent testimony in Congress. A grey alien doesn't have the ability to procreate, doesn't have the ability to love, and doesn't have the ability to perhaps create music, doesn't even speak, just communicates telepathically. Is that a comparison that's worthy to show how humans, while we might consider ourselves lower down in the overall scheme of things, but we have this innate ability so much more, and we've still got so much more potential?
Well, our potential is infinite. That's why we're only using 4%. Most of the alien races out there are using 80 to 90%. Some are even using 100%. And that's our equivalent of 10%. If we were to at least use 10%, we would have IQs in the 400s and 500s, just like the rest of the interstellar races. But that's just a 10%. Imagine we still have another 9%, 90% to go. So, about the grays, those are programmed life forms. They are very robotic. The grays, along with the zetas, who come from the star system of Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, have lost their procreating abilities. They have lost their connection to God because they are an example of transhumanism. It turns out that millions of years ago, the zetas were actually humans, just like we are. I mean, and they decided to take the transhumanist path, and now they are a dying species. And that explains their abductions, why they're coming into our reality, into our timeline, in order to extract genetics to create some sort of a hybrid between us and them so that they could continue their dying race. But again, we carry the greatest diversity of celestial genetics from across many universes. And so our genetics are actually a hot commodity right now to many aliens right now. And that explains this abduction phenomena by different types of ETs, because everybody wants a little bit of our genetics. And we have what they don't want, what they want. We have what they don't have, is what I'm saying.
Indeed. Now, just thinking about the idea of disclosure. Now, the Dave Grush testimony started with, of all things, when Chuck Schumer came out and said we need to get to the bottom of it, anyone paying attention said, no, that's a red flag. This is part of this Project Bluebeam perhaps setup. It indicates that maybe we're getting to the end game, that they're going to call the fake alien attack. That means the deep state knows they're gone and they're just laying the groundwork, which is truly extraordinary when you think of it, because that's exactly how it was mapped out in 2017 when we started listening to people like David Wilcock and various others talking about the time when John Kerry arrived in Antarctica 3 days after Donald Trump won the White House. We're scratching our heads thinking, what is he doing down there? Who is he going to see? So there was much in all of that we realised that there's a much bigger picture here. But in order for this singularity, and this is a different singularity. This is the singularity when we realize that there's something bigger than all of us, that there is another species that's intelligent, at least at our level, if not more advanced. Does that happen by way of a US presidential disclosure, or does it happen with something landing in the middle of a football field somewhere that's just absolutely undeniable? How do you see this actual event taking place, if in fact it does?
Well, it depends on which parallel Earth you're in. Right now, they're all coexisting at the same time. There's an infinite amount of different versions, and we're constantly shifting from one degree to the next, where you're actually slightly different on each reality. On a positive, you could say, spectrum of a timeline, we are going to be witnessing first contact, where massive amounts of UFOs are going to be seen by millions of people worldwide. They're going to be witnessing, the appearance of motherships, scouting ships, and these are benevolent ETs, not Project Bluebeam. However, on a negative timeline, for those that are not, evolving spiritually, for those that are not doing spiritual work, they might experience Project Bluebeam. Of course, that is the last card that even the Nazi scientist, what's his name, von Braun, talked about as a final solution to bring about this one world government. So depending on where people are vibrating, depending on where they're putting their focus, will ultimately determine if they go into the positive Earth, where we do have first contact with the benevolent races who are going to welcome us into the galactic community as we become a spacefaring society. Because within the private sector, we're already a spacefaring society, where we've reached the level status of Type 2 society. We skipped Type 1 and we went all the way to Type 2, where now we're like harnessing energy from stars through a technology known as the Dyson sphere. Well, all that stuff is being implemented by these breakaway groups. So on a positive trajectory, they're trying to bring that information, that disclosure to us, so that we could have the technology as well. So it all depends, positive extraterrestrials don't just land. They don't just openly show up, because they do abide by a galactic, what is called the prime directive of the galaxy. They don't just openly show up. They're going to be violating protocol if they did. So that's why they have to do it in a nonchalant, very gradual, covert way. And that explains why they are the star people down here, right? All the star people that believe that they're not from this world. A lot of the star beings are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. A lot of the first and second wavers are woken up,
That's an interesting perspective, isn't it? Because through the transgender and the LGBT whole thing, there's no space there for someone who believes themselves to identify as a starseed. And perhaps that's another area altogether. But it's interesting, though, that the spiritual people in that regard don't look to identify themselves as somebody different and therefore engage in the politics of division. That seems to be trivial to people who see a greater, much greater universal community, not just here on Earth. Ismael, if we talk about just briefly the energy harnessing you said through the stars, the politicians that are obsessed with green energy and climate change and renewables and all these things that don't seem to work, are these people simply just playing their role and are being limited by their imagination, their scope to ask the bigger questions, such as the research that you and many others are doing?
Yeah, they're just playing the role. They don't want people to understand that they do have the technology that we need, that will put an end to their petrochemical pharmaceutical companies, which are multi-billion-dollar industries. And I believe that was the reason why not Eisenhower, but many of the presidents after Eisenhower was actually, good. He actually wanted to he wanted to bring about this advanced technology. But unfortunately, because of what Truman did, the president before him, they couldn't. At that point, the U.S. corporation, right, the government, the corporate America was already sold out to the Greys, the Zetas, and the Draconians or the Reptilians, and so unfortunately, it didn't happen. But they don't want this technology to come out to the public. They don't want 0-point energy. They don't want replicators, because if everyone had a replicator, that would end the economy. Who would want to work when you could just, it's like 3D on steroids, where you can just print out your house, your car, a piece of chocolate cake, anything you want within seconds. Boom, right there. It's an advanced technology that is actually tapped into zero point, zero point energy, where you can manifest anything you want. So they don't
It's
want us to have this technology because it's liberating. It's liberating.
Now, I want to go down a slightly different pathway, and this might be a bit of a question without notice. I'm just going to put a book title up here on screen, bright yellow, everyone can see it. The Depopulation Imperative, How Many People Can Earth Support? Now, for those of us that are following the events of the last 3 years, whether or not it was the problem or the solution that was worse, and I just want to speak in a little bit of code here so that we can maintain our our broadcast on some of these social media platforms. But in my research that I've done over the years in terms of off planets, other planets and species, nowhere else in the universe exists a planet with a population, I understand, of no more than 200 or 300 million souls, and yet here on Earth we're at 8 billion. In part of this, as the negative and the positive, is it possible that we here on Earth can sustain a population of 8 billion that seemingly in 30 years' time will be 10 billion, 100 years might be 15 billion? Is that ever going to be possible, or are we going to go through a situation where the population declines both negatively and from the positive perspective? Have you got an opinion on this?
Well, we're going to inherit the technology. Disclosure will take place, and we will become a spacefaring society. Therefore, we're going to be able to colonize, terraform Mars to have the exact living conditions of the Earth, like an oxygen, atmospheric condition, so that we could breathe on the surface world of Mars. Right now, the breakaway groups that are related with the secret space programs live within Mars, but we are going to have the technology, and we do, where we're going to be able to colonize other worlds and put an end to our depopulation, or I'm sorry, our population issue. Now, the dark cabal, they want to depopulate us. That's what Mr. Bill Gates is trying to do through pretty much everything that he's doing. He's doing everything in his power to wipe out 90% of the human population, but it's not going to happen because there are forces at play here, greater forces than him, greater forces than the negative aliens and the negative AI that's also working through him, that are actually protecting the humans at this time. And the reason why there's 8 billion plus humans on this planet, whereas in many worlds there's under a billion, is because all the souls want to come here at this time because of this great transformation that's about to take place, this shift that's coming, the shift in consciousness, this shift in this radical transformation that is going to change everything for the better. And so that's why I believe that a lot of souls are here at this time. But at the same time, about less than 30% of the population are NPCs. They don't have souls, or they're generated by the Matrix. They're just kind of like robots. And that explains Brandon. That's why Brandon forgets a lot. I think he's already on his 6th clone. After the 4th clone, they're not too cognitive. They kind of they keep messing up.
It reminds me of that movie Multiplicity with Michael Keaton. If you get a chance to download that or look at it, it was just a man who was having a lot of difficulty at home. He was a builder supervisor or something, and he discovers cloning technology back in the analog days, and he clones himself. And his first clone goes to work, and he becomes the house dad. And then he realizes he needs another one, and then another one. By the time he gets to the 4th version of himself, he's completely useless. It's an extraordinary, funny movie, but it's ironic how art imitates life. Ishmael, there's so much to consider in this big story here, and it's amazing how we can relate it all back. And this is what I loved about this topic. Going back perhaps, I'm thinking pre-Trump years, and just having questions about, do I get involved politically? I felt like, as a man approaching back then his 40s and sort of middle age, what's my contribution going to be? And it was always to follow the straight and narrow pathway. And you go down that path, and then for entertainment purposes or just perhaps interest purposes, you start exploring intellectually, like everyone who's watching this is doing the same thing one way or another. And that's when you take on the ET perspective. And now it's all merging. It's pretty much the same narrative. And it seems to me, if we continue just briefly on this depopulation agenda, it's those that refuse to open their minds to think that it's all just pretend and manipulation are the ones stuck in this 3D negative let's go back to communism, let's print our meat world that can only ever end up worse than we started. And nowhere in human evolution have we ever thought that going backwards was the way to go forwards.
Well, we're trying to go back to the organic way of life. You know,
Yes,
that's
but the other side is saying let's use technology to make things worse, print our meat, not focus on anything but a system of fear, climate change. My goodness me, the global temperature is going to go up 1 degree and we're all going to melt. I mean, none of it makes any sense.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But again, this is all driven by entities that are not of this planet. You know, to an extent, you know, the Anunnaki still run this world through their puppets, and
Yes.
they never left. By the way, they never left. They've been here. They've established cities in the underground, and that's where most of the negative Anunnaki that took over the affairs of our world have been hiding. So they've been kind of running this show since for 15, 20,000 years.
Now,
Time is up.
just
They know that.
sorry, just on that, just for a bit more information. So many people speculate that Antarctica is one of these underground bases, perhaps for Anunnaki. And there's been some other speculation. I think there was one in Bulgaria. That there was Mr. Mythos did a wonderful video on it on YouTube, where he talks about it and how these people were sort of summoned. There was one alien researcher that was summoned to visit this particular place that was dubbed the Area 51. Or I think it was Bulgaria, and she went there and they got inside and they got to a place where they realised that they were approaching some entity. They thought they were going to find the first skeleton of the first ever human created, and they were called out by the military, and it was completely sealed up with concrete. That was that story for those that want to check that story out. But is that what you're implying here, that they've been operating in underground areas in all parts of the world?
Yes, correct. Yeah, and that explains some of the giants that they found.
Yes.
You know, so they never left. They've always been here.
And that would make perfect sense that they would be pulling the strings from under the earth. But it just seems such an odd thing, doesn't it? If there's 8 billion human beings and you're the human being pulling the strings and you don't like what's going on, to not turn to the people and say, listen, there is a clandestine force working against us here. There's 8 billion of us. Do we want to go get these people? Maybe we lose a few or not. But they've never, ever entertained it, which says to me that the people ruling are weak. And that is not the people of who we are. Humans would want to fight their way out of something. And so it is that this political war, this spiritual universal war going on, and therefore it seems that the selection of Donald Trump, or the emergence of him as a person with the thickest skin in the world, to be taken on like no one else could hold up to what he's done, and perhaps even to have the JFK Jr. In the background, in sort of hiding somewhere else, and perhaps he's going to reveal himself as 17, the letter that responds to that number as him being the brains behind that, would be just spectacular, because it would prove to all of us that since his father was taken out back in 1963, that it's been since then that the United States went off on a separate pathway and was overtaken at that stage by the spies that had took over the world.
Exactly. Yes, and that explains why before 2016, you know, people they were drinking the Kool-Aid. They were walking to the slaughterhouse without questioning. And then 2016 came about, and all of a sudden we had this massive awakening worldwide with QAnon, you know, military movement, the truth just coming out everywhere. You know, people waking up for the first time to this corruption. And then I believe that that is what brought us to this moment right now, where we're eventually going to hit critical mass. I mean, it's growing. You know, humanity is waking up.
Now, we're going to sort of hit the last quarter of our allotted time, and I'm very grateful that you're here, and it's a wonderful conversation. For mine, it's half information, half therapy, because you're answering a lot of questions that I've had, and I just feel, and there'll be other people watching that just feel that their spirits are lifting. They can feel that vibration running through their body, and when you feel that positiveness, you know that you're on the right path. But looking forward in all of this, and Ishmael, if nothing changes, you're only halfway through your life or less. You've got a lot ahead of you. What do you expect to see in your lifetime? What are the amazing things that you expect to be able to do and achieve?
Well, I strongly believe that sometime between now and 2030, there is going to be an event called by many names that is going to activate our DNA, and there's going to be some sort of transition from the current reality into a better reality that is already coexisting, but on a different dimension. So I believe that the new earth is here. I believe that when the window of opportunity comes, when the stargates open, the good people, all the good people, are going to go into the new earth. And I believe that's going to happen between now and 2030. I believe 2030 is the deadline.
Hmm.
Um, and that's my personal belief. So I'm expecting to not die. I know this sounds kind of way off from left field somewhere, but I don't think people that are around between now and 2030, they're not going to die. You know,
Hmm.
this is the final incarnation. If
Hmm.
when our dormant DNA comes back online, we're going to be a whole new species. We're going to be n- not these beings that live in this body of flesh and blood that is limited, but we're going to have some abilities that are going to be equivalent to what many call superhuman powers.
Hmm.
That's what I believe in on the ascending organic positive timeline. Of course, for those that don't partake of the mark of the beast, this is the time to make that choice. And a lot of us are choosing the right, of course, but then there's also a lot of people within the elites that are choosing to do it in a lazy way where they want to just have these abilities, but through technology. So in either
Yes.
case, past 2030 and beyond, there's going to be human 3.0, whether it is through technology or through a natural um, transformation, organic transmutation of genetics, transformation of genetics. That's the word.
If we therefore pivot back to our audience, the individual that's involved in all of this, what might they think, therefore, of the time, just simply the date of their birth in all of this? Should they look at it as the ultimate opportunity, as the lucky one, more lucky perhaps than their parents before them, their grandparents before them? Certainly, in my perspective, my parents unfortunately both died in their 60s and young, one in the noughties and one in the last decade. And I feel like they were young people when they died, and they missed out on so much. But at the same time, I don't think either of them would have coped with the pandemic. They were both too active; they could never have been locked down, and it would have taken them out. So in many ways, I kind of feel at peace that they passed before then. But I look at it and go, this was all because it was meant to be that I was the one that was meant to live in this particular generation. Do you see it the same way? Not that we're anything more special, but just the timeline in all of it, that it is our time.
It is. Yeah. And we all chose to be here at this time. We all chose to witness and experience the greatest transition in human history that happens only once every 26,000 years. So we are, in that way, we should be grateful. We should be happy that we are here at the finish line, that,
Yeah.
we're going to be the forerunners of a whole new different world. And we're also going to be pioneers of a whole new different race known as Homo luminous. So we're going to go from Homo sapiens sapiens to Homo luminous.
Oh, that's amazing. And how is that defined, or how is that arrived at? That term is a beautiful term, Homo luminous. How did that come about?
Well, there are different terminologies depending on the group of people that are referring to this human 3.0, which is humans with supernatural abilities, like the X-Men,
Mm.
like the superheroes that we watch in DC and Marvel movies. So scientists call it Homo neoticus. They say that, you know, whether we do it through technology or not, they foresee a time where the emergence of human, what they call Homo neoticus or Homo superior, humans with advanced genetics, with certain types of DNAs that are going to allow them to do, supernatural things like fly, teleport, eliminate, generate electricity, right? Just like Susan Thor, stuff like that. So there's different terminologies. I believe that Homo luminous is the right term. There are different ways of describing this next stage of human evolution, but the reason I like to refer to the word luminous is because of the activation of our light bodies. It is through the activation of our light bodies, believe it or not, which is part of our dormant DNA. That's where our light body is. It's part of our crystalline genetics. Um, is going to activate, and when it does activate, we are going to be like, very divinely advanced, like physical angels, because we're still going to have physical form, but we're going to have these amazing powers. They even believe, I've studied in the secret prophecies, that we're actually supposed to bypass the old gods of old, like Zeus and Poseidon and Hades. That we're going to be actually more powerful than the gods of old when we do activate our dormant DNA.
I'm just going to put Cheryl's comment up here. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. This is something that's been at my very heart, and some people get offended and some people religiously think that it's not. I like to define the age of Aquarius simply as the turning of the information hierarchy from a vertical hierarchy that is a hierarchy to a horizontal, which is the even dissemination of information to all of us. And at that point, you lose it. And that's like technically what the internet really was. It was the omnipresence of information. And yet the age of Pisceans are the ones that are still trying to censor that and keep that vertical hierarchy going on. But it's a wonderful point. Just one more question on behalf of our audience, and this might be for people who are looking at their lives today, who perhaps have struggled for a lot of it the last few years especially, and they're looking now and wondering when it is that will be their moment that things turn around for them and they get there, and they might be struggling. Is there a connection therefore, or perhaps a disconnect, that in the new era that is inevitable, that those shackles will just come off them and they no longer have to worry about it? Or is it something that is still involved, as you talked about, this work that we all need to do, that inevitably will lead to their success simply because they're following a pathway to something much bigger than they are already?
The second part, because due to the work that they're doing now, that will pretty much ultimately determine into which parallel Earth they go into. So, for the most part, yes, we're all going to go into the 4th D, 5th D density, right? Less dense than this reality, a much better world, but it doesn't end there, my friend. Uh, the end result of where we're heading to, the finish line, is all the way to the 12th dimension, and that is where we come from. We all descended from the 12th dimension when we were pure consciousness, pure energy, before animating any physical form. And that's where we're heading. So this is just the beginning, by the way. This is going to be the beginning of what is called spiritual evolution from this point on. We're done with physical evolution, right? So now we're just going to be evolving spiritually upward.
It's magnificent. Do you see a future where you will be able to planet hop and visit other planets as just part of daily life?
Yes, that's what happens once we go into the 5th dimensional Earth. Through the inner technology, through the activation of our light body, we're going to be able to visit other worlds. We're going to be able to transfer ourselves into other dimensions, and we're going to be free. That's what ultimate freedom is. It's the ability to travel at the speed of light without any external technology, but through your own light body. And that's the difference between the positive extraterrestrials and the negative ones. The positive ones, they don't need spaceships. They travel at the speed of light by converting their mass into pure energy, and like an email, travel through the ethers, and then they materialize themselves at their destination. And that's where we're heading. That's what we're going to be able to do.
It's extraordinary. It's something that I remember standing next to my mother as a 5 or 6 year old boy while she was doing the ironing, and I said, "Mum, in the future we'll be able to click our fingers and end up on another planet." And she looked at me like I was crazy, but I was certain in that moment. Ishmael, today's conversation, for many people following a normal news cycle, might think of it as, the ET conspiracy nuts. But if anything, it's been a conversation about possibility, but more so about hope. Hope that what we feel inside in this world today, in this world that is confused, disruptive, discriminatory, anyone who doesn't go against the system is now attacked, the misinformation laws, etc. We look at it and we wonder how it is that we could ever survive. And the reality is that what's coming is so much bigger, so much better than all of us could ever have imagined. And all it really takes is the willingness to say to ourselves, there is something better. And that's all there is. And once we focus on our emotions on that, we then ask questions and therefore go out and want to study more, research more. And so perhaps I can ask you at this point, how can people find your work to start them off on this journey?
Well, I do have a website. I actually have two websites. My first one's called ourcosmicorigin.com. It's all one word, ourcosmicorigin.com.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, you could access all my platforms, my YouTube channel, which is The Real Ismael Perez. I have pirated fake YouTube channels out there, so make sure you click on The Real Ismael Perez YouTube channel through my website, of course. You could also order the new edition of my book, Our Cosmic Origin, so that you could have access to the galactic history, the real history of the Earth, and the cosmic structure of the multiverse and Earth's place in the multiverse, among more other information that is just like phenomenal. Bridging the gap between cutting edge physics and, of course, ancient metaphysical knowledge. And then I have a second website called thecosmicarts.com, thecosmicarts.com. And through that website, you could actually access my online courses. So yeah, that's it. So ourcosmicorigin.com is my first website where you could access my platforms. I am constantly active on my YouTube channel. I have a lot of content that I am posting on a daily basis. So if you guys want to follow me there, feel free. And yeah.
Wonderful. Your work is prolific. I had a look today on the YouTube page, and I realised just how many interviews that you're doing. So I'm delighted and honoured that you were able to find the time to join me here, all the way over in Australia, to our audience. And surprisingly, my audience won't know this, but and most people are surprised when I tell them. But it's 70% female, 30% male, and 80% Australian. Which makes sense if you're coming from Australia. But this channel started out reporting on American news, and so there is a hunger, at least here in Australia, for interesting new information. And it's very, very clear that all of us are arriving at this exact moment, at this exact same time, and it wasn't really by accident. As you said, we're all born and chosen to be here at this time. Ismael, I want to thank you for your time today. As I said, a great privilege and thrill. And for our audience, I've put the details up there on the screen. We'll put something in the comments, but go check out Ismael's work. And this is the very beginning, and perhaps even it might be the first thing you gift yourself for Christmas this year is one of Ismael's courses. I know it's something that you don't normally think of, but expansion of the mind is everything, particularly as we move to 2030. Ismael Perez, thank you for being here on the World Series News channel and the Jason Q Citizen channel.
Thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. I look forward to it. And please check out the other news stories. There's an abundance of details there on World Series News, about 20 stories over the last 2 weeks of current issues that you might be surprised to see what's going on. See you all on the next show. Thanks.